Moreover, it is a clear demonstration of the EU's unequivocal support to the EU membership perspective of Moldova. Your country is part of Europe, European history, heritage and culture. We look forward to further intensifying our already well-established ties. The enlargement process is a geostrategic investment in peace, security, stability and prosperity. It is a driver for improving the economic and social conditions of our citizens, reducing disparities between countries, and must foster the values on which the Union is founded. Looking ahead to the prospect of a further enlarged Union, both future Member States and the EU need to be ready at the time of accession. Work on both tracks should advance in parallel. As illustrated by today's conference, the Union remains firmly committed to this process. We commend Moldova's clear determination to advance on the EU reform agenda and expect continued political commitment to carry out necessary reforms thoroughly and vigorously. The benefits for both sides of our close relations are evident. The EU is your largest trading partner, with obvious benefits for business and foreign investments. For your citizens, travel to the EU has become easier since visa liberalisation entered into force in 2014. The EU has been providing financial and technical support under various financial instruments and will continue to do so. Since the beginning of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, Moldova has been tackling significant challenges. A security and defence partnership has been signed on 21st May this year, and comprehensive support is provided through the EU Partnership Mission in Moldova. The EU has mobilised €2.2 billion since autumn 2021 to help Moldova. Moreover, Moldova participates in a number of EU programmes, including EU Customs, Fiscalis, LIFE, EU for Health, Horizon Europe and Connecting Europe Facility. Organisations and individuals from Moldova can also benefit for certain actions of the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps programmes. Moldova also participates in several interregional programmes and is a member of the EU macro-regional strategy for the Danube region. In addition to this, the EU highlights the importance of pursuing transformative economic reforms, sectoral cooperation such as further energy and transport infrastructure interconnections and Moldova's gradual integration in the EU internal market, whilst safeguarding its integrity on the basis of implementation of the EU-Moldova Association Agreement, including the deep and comprehensive free trade area. Our negotiations are based on Article 49 of the Treaty of the European Union and take into account of all relevant Council and European Council conclusions, in particular those of March 2024, December 2023, June 2022 and those of March 2020 endorsing the revised enlargement methodology, the renewed consensus on enlargement agreed by December 26 European Council and the conclusions of the 1993 European Council in Copenhagen. The Council remains firmly committed to taking the enlargement process forward on the basis of agreed principles and conclusions which integrate the revised methodology so that the accession process is more predictable, more credible, more dynamic, and subject to stronger political steering. In line with previous Council conclusions and in the framework of the Copenhagen political criteria, the Council reaffirms the need for fair and rigorous conditionality, the principle of own merits and reversibility. The Council stresses the importance of ensuring that the EU can maintain and deepen its own development, including its capacity to integrate new members. The impact of enlargement on the main policy areas of the EU will be assessed along the process of accession negotiations. The EU expects Moldova to continue to take ownership and demonstrate the credibility of their commitment and political will through the implementation of necessary reforms and tangible progress on the fundamentals. The active participation of civil society in the reform process remains important to achieving successful long-term implementation. In line with the European Council conclusion of 14 and 15 December 2023 and 21-22 March 2024, the Council approved a general negotiating framework, taking into account the aforementioned conclusion as well as other relevant Council conclusions, the renewed consensus on enlargement and established practice. The negotiating framework, which we present to you today, takes account of the experience of past enlargement and ongoing accession negotiations, as well as the evolving EU acquis, and duly reflects Moldova's own merits and specific characteristics. The negotiations are aimed at Moldova integrally adopting the EU acquis and ensuring its full implementation and enforcement. It incorporates to the revised enlargement methodology, which provides for an even stronger focus on the fundamental reforms in the accession negotiations. Moldova will need, therefore, to fully embrace and continue to implement reforms in the areas of rule of law and fundamental rights, the strengthening of democratic institutions and public administration reform, as well as economic criteria. Particular attention should be given to judicial reform and the fight against corruption, as well as the protection and non-discriminatory treatment of persons belonging to minorities. To ensure the irreversibility of progress in these areas and its full and effective implementation, progress will continue to be closely monitored by the Commission, which will report regularly on it to the Council. Furthermore, safeguarding internal security requires effective law enforcement cooperation with Member States' authorities. Given the crucial importance throughout the process of the underlying reforms, progress on the fundamentals cluster will determine the overall pace of the negotiations. This will allow sufficient time to establish the necessary legislation, institutions and solid track records of implementation before the negotiations are closed. Screening reports to be prepared by the Commission will provide substantial guidance, including on the tasks to be addressed in the roadmaps to be adopted by the authorities of Moldova. The EU acquis includes inter alia the objectives and principles on which the Union is founded. As set out in the Treaty on European Union, as a future Member State, we expect you to adhere to the values listed in Article 2 in the Treaty on European Union, namely the respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. And furthermore, EU accession implies the timely and effective implementation of the entire body of the EU law or EU acquis as it stands at the time of accession. Under the revised enlargement methodology, the development of sufficient administrative and judicial capacity as part of the fundamentals cluster is key in fulfilling all obligations stemming from membership. Good neighbourly relations with EU member states and other enlargement partners remains essential. We welcome Moldova's firm and principled stance in condemning Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. We welcome Moldova's strategic commitment to its EU path and the significant increase in its alignment with the EU common foreign and security policy position and restrictive measures. We encourage Moldova to continue this positive trend towards full alignment in line with respect for these principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, including for member states. CFSP alignment is a key aspect of the EU integration process and a strong expression of a partner's strategic choice and place in a common of value. Let us also recall the parallel to the accession negotiations. The Union and Moldova will continue their civil society dialogue and cultural cooperation with the aim of bringing people closer together and ensuring the support of citizens for this accession process. We expect Moldova to continue to strategically communicate the benefits and obligations of the accession process and of EU membership to its own public, including addressing disinformation in accordance with its pro-European strategic choice. It will remain up to the Member States to decide whether conditions are right for the conclusion of the negotiations, bearing in mind developments in the EU acquis since the date of the opening of negotiations and Moldova's readiness for membership. The accession negotiations we open today will be rigorous and demanding. With determination and commitment, we are confident in your capacity to bring it to a successful conclusion. We will support you in your efforts and we look forward to welcoming you as a fully fledged member of the European Union. Prime Minister, before giving the floor to you, let me first invite Commissioner Olivér VÁRHELYI to provide additional remarks. Olivér, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dear Prime Minister, dear Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the European Commission, I want to first of all welcome you, Prime Minister RECEAN, and the Moldovan delegation to this very first Intergovernmental Conference. It is my pleasure to address you today on this very special day. I thank, of course, the Belgian presidency for organizing this Intergovernmental Conference, leading the work of the Council, including on the adoption of the EU general position and the negotiating framework. Today's accession conference is the first milestone that marks a new chapter in the relations between the European Union and Moldova. The determination of the Moldovan authorities to set clear commitment to the reform path has been key to this success. Our meeting today is a well-deserved recognition of these efforts and the progress your country has achieved. This is especially notable in the face of significant challenges arising from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and hybrid actions against Moldova. In these challenging conditions, Moldova has fulfilled the steps to formally open accession negotiations. You are taking forward a broad justice reform to reinforce the independence accountability and efficiency of the system. You have strengthened the institutions fighting corruption, and this will help you to build a strong track record and ensure implementation of your de-oligarchization plan. You have reinforced the fight against organized crime, including through your enhanced collaboration with international partners. Moreover, you have kept up the good work on public administration reform and public finance management. To achieve full compliance with all membership criteria, Moldova needs to continue reforming and to remain fully committed to this process. We need to use this momentum to further progress on the fundamentals, to complete the judiciary reform, to continue the fight against corruption and organized crime, to further strengthen democratic institutions and the public administration, and to address the economic criteria. The negotiating framework presented today puts a strong emphasis on all fundamental reforms and provides a sound basis for the accession negotiations. The Commission is ready to start the bilateral screening exercise immediately. The first meeting is already scheduled. The exercise will allow to identify major issues to address during the negotiations and areas where preparations need to be intensified. You have already taken important steps in structuring the work of your government for this process. The accession negotiations will require sustained commitment and coordination among all institutions and your entire administration. I want to stress that these efforts should bring results beyond the negotiations. The transformative power of enlargement will be presented throughout the negotiation process and will be felt before the day of your actual accession. I count on you to ensure an inclusive approach to the entire process, working with stakeholders, the parliamentary opposition, the local authorities, as well as with the civil society is essential. It will also be crucial to communicate to the wider public the benefits and opportunities that the accession process creates for all Moldovan citizens. This is especially important ahead of the referendum on EU accession announced for the 20th of October. Let me assure you that we will continue support Moldova on its EU path, as well as in addressing the numerous challenges that the country is facing. Our economic and investment plan has already mobilized 1.5 billion euros in public and private investments in key sectors. It will remain the financial heart of the Moldova economic growth plan that we are jointly working on now. The Commission's role is also to make sure that the accession process abides by European principles and European standards. Our objective is to ensure that Moldova is well prepared for joining the EU when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Várhelyi. And now the floor goes to the delegation of Moldova, and in particular, Prime Minister RECEAN. Prime Minister, please, the floor is yours.
Dear Minister LAHBIB, dear Commissioner Várhelyi, distinguished colleagues and esteemed delegates. On behalf of the Republic of Moldova, I am honored to address you today at the first intergovernmental conference between Moldova and European Union. Today marks an important step in our journey towards EU membership. Our country, having diligently completed all the recommendations, is officially commencing accession talks with the EU. I would like to start by expressing my heartfelt gratitude to our teams in Chisinau and Brussels for their tremendous efforts in making this possible. Your hard work and commitment have brought us to this significant milestone. My sincere appreciation extends to the Belgian Presidency, the European Council and the Member States, as well as the Commission and the Parliament. And of course, I want to extend my gratitude to thousands of people from Moldovan institutions that are working tirelessly to make Moldova part of the EU family. The conference today marks the official opening of the negotiations for Moldova's accession to the European Union. It is a historic event for us in historical times for Europe, and it signifies the strong commitment of both sides to European peace, security, stability and prosperity. On this occasion, I reiterate unequivocally that Moldova sees its future within the European Union, and we will spare no efforts to achieve our strategic goal of becoming an EU member. We welcome the negotiating framework proposed by the EU and hereby express consent to its governing principles, substance of negotiations, and the negotiating procedures. We are committed to follow the principles governing the negotiations in good faith, with full understanding that these negotiations will be based on Moldova's own merits. We would not want it in any other way. The European Union was conceived as a project of peace and reconciliation among erstwhile enemies. Concrete steps of integration would make war among its members unthinkable and materially impossible, besides bringing prosperity to the citizens. The European Union has succeeded in all that. It has not experienced warfare since it was founded 74 years ago. The EU's progressive enlargement, and especially the enlargement with 10 European countries from behind the Iron Curtain, has expanded and consolidated that zone of peace and stability. Moldova sees its future EU membership as part of the drive for peace, stability and prosperity across the European continent that the EU's founders had in mind. Extending and strengthening Europe's zone of peace is especially needed given Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, which we strongly condemned. Russia war, the resulting tragedy for the Ukrainian people and its threat to European security have shaped a new reality. Accelerating rapprochement with the European Union has become an existential imperative for Moldova to safeguard our country's security and the livelihoods of our citizens. Thus, Moldova's application for EU membership on 3rd of March 2022 was a natural as well as an urgent step for our country. It expressed our conviction that within the EU, Moldova is safer, and that with Moldova as a member state, EU is safer. Just like the EU, Moldova is facing the consequences of Russia's war on our economy and our citizens. Over the past year, our country has been subject to intensified hybrid warfare orchestrated by Moscow in its effort to upend our political life, economic recovery, energy security, social cohesion, and ultimately to derail European integration. Ahead of the 2 consecutive electoral years, including an upcoming referendum on Moldova's accession to the EU, we anticipate that such disruptive attacks will continue to escalate. Through disinformation campaigns, actions meant to instill a sense of fear and insecurity in the society, electoral interference, cyber threats, and the stoking of social unrest. Yet, with the unwavering support and solidarity of our friends, the European Union and its member states, we managed to overcome the initial shock on our citizens' way of life and on our economy. We express deep appreciation for the financial assistance provided, especially during the last few years of unprecedented challenges. We are now determined to create the conditions for sustained economic growth and societal modernization, to create a more prosperous future for all of us. By becoming an EU member state, we will contribute to a wider shared European area of peace, stability and prosperity. Moldova's general position at this first Intergovernmental Conference on Moldova's accession to the European Union reflects our strong commitment to adhere to the same principles and values of the Union, as set out in the EU treaties and the Charter of Fundamental Rights, to progressively align our legislation with the EU acquis and ensure its application, thus becoming by the time of accession an active, reliable and competitive EU member state, assuming all obligations of membership. We understand the road to EU membership requires significant effort and dedication, and that it involves rigorous negotiations and comprehensive reforms. But it's a journey we undertake with confidence and determination and with a clear vision for our future. That is because we do it first and foremost for ourselves, for our citizens and for our prosperous future at home in Moldova. Our citizens are European and they deserve to enjoy Europe in their own country. We are building European Moldova. We have set up a sound EU integration mechanism with the government charged with the coordinating Moldova's accession effort, and we adopted the national plan for the legislative alignment with the EU acquis. Consultations with other stakeholders like the civil society, the private sector, academia, and our diaspora living abroad are key to this process. Moldova will progressively adopt and implement the EU legislation as it will be at the time of accession. Moldova aims to achieve domestic readiness to align its legislation with the EU acquis and tend to ensure its efficient implementation by 2030. Prior to full membership, we are keen to seek accelerated participation in EU policies and programmes as soon as we qualify for these. This will bring early benefits for our country, its society and economy, and it will add to the reform momentum. Recognizing the critical importance of speed in the current geopolitical context, Moldova is pursuing an accelerated reform agenda, one that is both ambitious and realistic. The European Union is our main trade partner. The EU-Moldova's association agreement, including the deep and comprehensive free trade area, has been a key driver of Moldova's economic progress and of dynamic and growing bilateral trade. In the perspective of accession, we will accelerate the implementation of the agreement and the action plan for the DCFTA. Moldova is already progressively integrating the EU's economic process, taking substantial steps for consolidating its market economy and preparing to become an equally competitive partner on the EU's single market, contributing thus to a stronger European economy. During accession talks, we may request transitional periods for sectors where we are not yet fully prepared for complete harmonisation and implementation of the acquis at the time of the EU accession, and where immediate compliance could significantly challenge the current state of